Welcome to the School of Rock Bottom with Oliver Mason. I'm an actor, a voiceover artist, a performing arts school principal and a mental health coach. And it's these careers and passions combined that have given birth to this podcast. Those working across the creative industries are 3 times more likely to have a mental health problem. And those working in performing and entertainment are twice as likely to suffer from depression and up to 3 times more likely to have an anxiety disorder. So on this podcast, as you know, I invite incredible creatives that have lived through a rock bottom but have survived. This is a podcast of hope and how to get out. And I'm really delighted today because I've got the tremendous TMO in the house. How are you?
Woo, I'm good.
Thank you so much for coming down today to talk to us, because we're going to be talking about some subjects today that everyone can relate to. So I really appreciate you coming down and spending time with us. Before we deep dive into what we need to talk about, I just want to give TMO a little intro so our listeners and viewers know who you are. I know you also go by the name of T and Tash. I think I'm going to stick with T today. Is that all right?
Yes. That's
Amazing. Yeah. So TMO is a multidisciplinary artist, notorious wordsmith, and an exceptionally inspirational character. UK-based T has performed her hard-hitting spoken word since 2017 on stages nationwide from Edinburgh to Weymouth. Delving deeply into the human psyche and back out again, T writes in faith that she can change the world belly by belly. She speaks of political hypocrisies that we sit on so comfortably. She talks of the relationship to ego, to art, to the process, and to each other. She is also a visual artist and held her debut solo exhibition in 2022 for Leeds Poetry Festival. T is both the poetry and the painting, the words and the vision, the chaos and the calm. Nuanced and authentic, this artist will change the world belly by belly if it's the last thing she does. Love that. Currently working on various collaborative projects under the name Finding TMO and performing at various festivals over 2023, including Rosa Festival. And all the links to all of this amazing work I will be putting into the show notes. Now, a quick trigger warning before we get into it. We're going to be talking about the sudden death of a parent and the topic of grief. And just to frame this, 8 million people suffered from the sudden death of someone close to them in the last year. And since the pandemic, 1 in 8 have experienced bereavement, and 10 to 20% will go on to suffer from complex grief, also known as prolonged grief. Like I said earlier, thanks so much for coming on. This is a topic that we've not covered yet, and it's essential that we do because, you know, it affects everybody at some point. But obviously your story is one that, you know, was sudden and unexpected, which obviously makes it harder. I'm going to start with the hardest question, if that's all right, and then we're going to pan out.
Sick.
I know obviously you've had a rock bottom, and that's why you're here to help others with your experience. Could you take us back to that rock bottom and take us on that journey, and we'll pan out from there, T? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So I remember the one I described to you, actually, to know it's one of many, I'm sure. But essentially, I lost my mum very, very suddenly in September 2020. And then I don't really remember too much of the next 6 months, but after it had kind of dissipated, there was a bit less phone calls. I wasn't getting everyone on me all the time, and I kind of had to get back to life. I just was the craziest depression. It was the worst. And I just was walking my dog one day, usual dog walk, and going past the road, going past this thing, and I just looked out and I almost went blind for a second. Like, it was nutty. It was out of body. And I just wished a bus would come and hit me. But I really wished it. And I've never really been on the suicidal end of things. However, I just wanted to be gone more than anything. And it was almost like I felt it in my body. And then as soon as I felt it, it was a let's not go back there again kind of thing. It's like, let's move on from this, because you don't want to go back to that feeling. But it was a physical thing, and it must have just been the manifestation of everything I'd been going through had finally come together. But yeah, it was really tough, really, really tough, but really inspirational as well, because I don't want to go back there.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there's a lot of research around sort of, you know, people's mental state when a passing of a loved one happens, about how you're going to respond to that. I was just curious to probe you a bit on that, because obviously, well, the listeners and viewers don't know, but this was September 2020.
Yes.
And we all know and remember all too well what was going on in 2020 with the pandemic. Can you take us up to that period? What was going on for you? Because it was such an odd time for everybody. And what was your relationship with your mum like at that moment?
So it was an actual crazy year, wasn't it? So my 2020, I decided to become a full-time creative about 4 weeks before COVID hit, which meant furlough was not an option. And I went from doing well to universal credit very, very quickly. Then went through a breakup during lockdown, as most people also did as well. And I think I'd gone to, I went to visit my mum in the March. And obviously Italy was hit so quickly, really. And we were there when they were locking down airports. So we genuinely had to get out at like March the 8th and just come back to England. And I had this weird feeling about everything. Been on lockdown, very, very poor, trying to hustle the art world, sell some prints here and there. And then, I just got a call in September. I just had loads of missed calls one night. And then I rang my uncle and he was like, yeah, your mum's dead. I was like, what? Pardon? And that was it. Like, changed my life. I don't really remember who I was too much before. But I'll be honest, lockdown for grieving was the best thing. I couldn't have got a job. I couldn't have gone out and had responsibilities. I was literally in my house, sat thinking till the next thing happens. I think it was really good for my healing, to be fair, in lockdown.
Right, yeah. Interesting. Yeah, we'll definitely come back to that. I hadn't actually realised that your mum's abroad when it happened. I wasn't aware of that context. Do you think that made it harder or easier looking back, or is that an impossible question to answer?
So we're 3 years in, aren't we? And I'm still dealing with lawyers in Italy and probate. Like, it's made it infinitely harder, as well, because with the funeral, I had to go out and we weren't supposed to be flying. So I had like 72 hours and all of this you had to go through, and I was sorting it out in Italy and in England. I think it's only by chance I got to go to a funeral. Only by chance, because that end of it, September, October, November, it was shutting down airports. And then obviously I had to get the dog, because that was the first thing that happened in my mind. I was like, what are we going to do about the dog? So how did that go? Yeah, basically I knew I needed to get my mum's dog. I knew that that's all I wanted. I don't care about her stuff. But that was my mission. And because I was so poor and didn't really know what I was doing, I needed to do a fundraiser. I couldn't even afford to get to Italy. Right. So I genuinely had to put a video up on Instagram. You know when you can see how sad someone is with their face, but they're smiling? It's so bizarre. And I was like, look, guys, my mum's died. I need to get this dog. And we did a fundraiser and I called it Operation Beppe. I got about $2,000 in 2 days. It was crazy. I was working a little hospitality job at the time. Like, wow. I was at the bar and I was like, oh my God, I've got it. I can go. Another poet actually called Sonny Green, he had offered to drive me to Italy. But because of lockdown rules, he was like, look, you'd have to pay me for my isolation period back. And I was like, yeah, I don't have that kind of money. So then it was a couple of weeks of scouring the airlines, making sure things weren't, because they were cancelling airlines all the time. They were just cancelling all the flights. I just had to time it perfectly so that I could get over, picked him up, did the vet's papers, and then just got on a train to Milan, Paris, London.
Wow.
Home.
Sounds really stressful and like there was a lot going on.
I don't know how I did it. I remember being in Paris and I was like, I should get an Uber Eats in Paris, but I was genuinely so sad. I had you have no appetite when you're that stressed, and I was like, I just don't even want to eat in an Uber Eats in Paris. Like, this must be a mad time. And I didn't realise it was a mad thing to do until this year. Yeah. And everyone was like, you rescued a dog from Italy in grief, in lockdown. I'm like, that is what I did last year. Yeah, that is.
And that's the lovely dog I've met today.
Yeah, the lovely quiet dog.
That's amazing. I hadn't realised the emotional connection that you had with that dog and the reasons why until you just said it. Wow, that's incredibly powerful as well.
Yeah. We're tight.
I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, but I know it's part of your journey up until the moment in your rock bottom. I would imagine that the pain of your mum passing would be awfully painful in and of itself, but I would guess that it might be compounded because you have a difficult relationship with your father. I don't know if I can ask you about that, whether you're comfortable talking about it, but I do think it does frame your experience a little bit.
Ask away. Go for it. Yeah, 100% I'll talk about it. So yeah, things with my father have been strained since the day I can remember. So we've never been close. My mum was on her rung 3 times a week and we'd always have a chat about it. But yeah, age 16, day before my first A-level exam, my dad came out as transgender, had the operation on my 18th birthday, and that was a grief in itself. I didn't realise that was a grief either. I look at a picture of my baptism and there's a woman that's dead, a man that doesn't exist because through the transition they literally like got rid of all evidence of the former self kind of. And then me as a baby, and I was like, none of these people exist. That's a bizarre photo to see. Like and it was a grief. I lost a parent in that process because they had to find out who they were, which wasn't the person I'd known for 16 years.
Wow.
And I've got a younger brother as well. I don't know how he's kind of coped with it, but I feel like that's a thing. Like losing a male role model as a male must be really, really different. So I do talk to him a bit about it, but yeah, the whole family had a bit of a rocky one.
Definitely. Wow. That experience around your dad coming out as transgender, we'll come back to a bit later if that's all right, because I think there's quite a lot to talk about, and I don't want to sort of overwhelm you with questions, but I think it does frame the loss of your mum in a different way, and that's why I brought it up sort of now. In terms of how you're doing at the moment, I have to say I think you're incredibly brave for coming on. I get the sense it's still quite raw for you. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but a lot of the guests that I've had on so far have experienced a rock bottom. I think the nearest rock bottom I've had so far has maybe been 5 years ago. Yours is not even 3. And it's often people that have done a lot of therapy, they've done a lot of work, and they're in a very sort of solid place. But you were very honest to me on the phone when you reached out to me on social media. You were like, look, I'm still wading my way through it, and I'm actually thinking that maybe I need therapy going forward. And I think it's brilliant to have this lens today that you're someone who's actually sort of more in amongst it than maybe my previous guests. I wondered if I could ask you some potentially quite difficult questions around grief and how you're feeling.
Yeah, go for it.
Kubler-Ross is one of the kind of experts of grief over the ages. She has a famous quote. It says, "You will not get over the loss of a loved one. You will learn to live with it. You will heal and you will rebuild yourself around the loss you have suffered. You will be whole again, but you will never be the same. Nor should you be the same, nor would you want to." As someone that hasn't lost a parent, I can only understand. Yet,
absolutely every single one of us, which is one of it's happening to all of us. So I think you should talk about it more.
Yeah.
And you always remember those kids at school that had lost a parent, don't you? It's a weird one.
Yeah.
So yeah. Sorry if that's quite morbid yet,
but it's true. We all will, and then if we don't, it means a parent has lost a child, which
too much worse. Yeah.
Yeah. Do those words resonate? In particular, you will be whole again, but you will never be the same. Is that somewhere you think that you might be now on your journey?
Yeah, I don't remember who I was. I genuinely, I know I was quite similar to me now, but not really. My tolerance has gone low. My boundaries are up. I'm very aware. It's like I haven't got any older siblings. It was almost like I was at the head of my table in like I've not got anything to lean back on.
Yeah.
It's mad. And just to be very, very aware that if I screw it up, it's only me that's going to save the day.
Right.
I like big. I really like that quote. I like it a lot.
So your brother and your dad not as in your life as you'd like them to be, or? I don't know. In theory, my brother. I'd love to spend more time with my brother. In theory, I'd like a better relationship with my father. In practice, I have tried that in every which way, shape or form I can. And I think going forward as an adult, I need to understand when to cut my losses, and sometimes it's family. Like,
and it sucks. Like we talk once every blue moon, birthdays and things, but there's an awareness with both of us that this is it might be a bit too far gone to kind of save back.
Right.
But the friends I've cultivated, the creative industries and the people around them are absolutely my family, and they come through all the time.
That's really amazing to hear. So that statement you said a moment ago that you're on your own and that there's no one to fall back on, it sounds like maybe that's not fully true then. In that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'll ever end up homeless. I've got lots of people that would help me out, but kind of career-wise, like I don't get advice from my mum, and I wouldn't want to lean too heavily on my friend group because I want them to see me succeed and be inspired by my things rather than the other way. Yeah, I feel like I know everyone. I love everyone. I do have a big, big passion for people, but I also know in my core that we all kind of stand alone in our space anyway.
Yeah.
They both exist together, don't they? Very, very lonely and very, very surrounded, and I don't know.
Well, I think your artwork kind of touches on that. And again, I'm getting a bit of a to-do list for later to talk to you about. But often that kind of paradox, I think, is a theme that runs through the way you describe your artwork anyway, at least. And I think that's quite an interesting way. It seems to be like a coping mechanism for you, which I can completely relate to, by the way. So Kubler-Ross, as I just quoted, she was the one that sort of came up with the classic 5 stages of grief that often, therapists talk about or people talk about. And actually, no disrespect to her, but I think modern science and psychology has actually said, it's probably not as accurate as we thought, that there aren't sort of an exact 5 stages, and some people don't have all the stages, and sometimes they're actually in a completely different order. But I wondered if I could just go through them with you briefly, what they are and how they may or may not relate to your journey so far.
Yeah, please do. I don't even know what they are.
It's all right. So one of them, the first stage, is denial. Did you go through a period of that where there was just like a disbelief and you couldn't believe it had happened?
Yeah, 6 months.
Yeah.
At least.
Really?
At least, yeah. It was ridiculous. No one expected it because it was sudden. I'd never seen her sick. Like, yeah, it wasn't like an old lady that we're waiting on and she's got loads and loads of problems. She was doing all right, and yeah, it was just the shock of it, and then yeah, it lasted ages.
Wow,
ages.
And I know the circumstances around it. You wouldn't have known because I think she literally went to sleep and had a stroke, is it, or something like that happened? Stroke,
aneurysm, heart attack in her sleep. It was it was
completely unexpected. Yeah, very
unexpected. She was halfway through a crossword. She'd started a painting because she was a painter as well. I've got it now, and I sit with it, and I'm like, one day I'll finish it, but like, God knows what's going to go on there. There's not too much on it. It's just the base layer of a really cool painting. So.
Wow.
But yeah.
You might be able to take the artwork on and do something with it. That's incredible.
100%. But yeah, I daren't yet. Do you know what I mean? I need to be in a really good headspace.
Yeah, keep me up to date with that. That sounds like an amazing project. Maybe something that you'll never ever want to part with as well, I would imagine. But
no, never, no.
Yeah.
Literally, I'd keep that canvas with me if I'd be on a kayak in the middle of the ocean with that canvas probably. And the dog.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The second one is anger. Anger that the person has gone, and actually, well, I will deal with that part of it first. Do you remember sort of an anger period of feeling angry about what happened?
I don't think I ever really was angry that she'd gone. I was very angry that this is my life now, and I was very angry that it happened to me. But I've never been angry. I couldn't.
Yeah.
No, I think maybe. I think I was in a kind of maybe a bit of denial and a bit of anger at the same time almost, but it was just anger at the situation rather than.
Yeah, you didn't like project that onto the universe or God or anything else. It was you were able to sort of be pragmatic about it. It sounds a little bit.
I think so. It was a weird one. There was a couple of weeks actually. The first times I started going out again, and it was almost like I did everyone in the shops and at Sainsbury's. I just wanted to be like, my mum's just died.
Yeah,
and I just wanted to. Like, she's gone, my mum's dead, and that was my only like fact about myself for a really long time. And I remember because I had a tattoo booked before she died, and it was a big one. So I was like, oh, I've got to go. But it was the first time I'd left the house.
Yeah.
And I bumped into my friends. They were like, how are you? And I was like, Mum's dead. They were like, fuck. And then I went to get this tattoo. It was on my belly. I told the guy, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this because my emotions are everywhere. No pain, zero pain, nothing. It had absolutely overridden my physical things.
Wow.
I sat there, didn't even put music on. Felt like it took 20 minutes and it covered my belly. So
right. Wow.
Yeah, powerful, but bizarre.
Yeah. And I think, there's no, I should have said this from the outset, there's no right way to grieve. There's no, whatever you're experiencing, particularly if someone's listening to this, experience it now, we've all got our own process. There is no right way to grieve, right? Even though I haven't lost a parent, I lost a best friend when I was, I think, around 24, who died in a drink driving accident. Very, very unexpectedly. I was literally speaking to him hours before, and we lived together 4 years. And I think it took me, I can relate so much that you're talking about, but obviously being very careful to reiterate, it wasn't a parent, so I can't even imagine it being the same thing. But just remember my emotional life and my physical life, the way you just described it, just seemed so enmeshed in the same way that you describe it. Like, I'd be out and people would be having a good time, and I'd be like, well, hang on a minute, this friend of mine has passed away, and I couldn't reconcile the two things. I sort of saw him everywhere I went as well. And
it's also it's so annoying that the world goes on. You're like, oh, everyone's got to still go jobs. And we shouldn't. We should all be thinking about this situation. It's affecting me massively. But you can't. Everything just keeps going.
Yeah. The next stage, a depressive stage, which is obviously different to clinical depression, but a thought of, why should I continue? And obviously this is something that you described in the rock bottom, isn't it?
I think, that was when that was, for sure. Yeah, I like. It's hard, isn't it? Because you do have to accept things eventually, but it's unfair. No one should have to go through grief. It's so bad. It is the worst.
Yeah.
And I think that is the one when I was like, my mum's dead. I just wanted to go around telling people that with anger, and it's when you get the kind of jealousy of other families. Christmas times, that would be when that one hits.
Yeah.
Christmas times, birthday times. Yeah.
I've noticed that with my wife. She lost her dad quite young. He was in his early 50s, and all the anniversaries are very, very challenging. And that's something that I've noticed that was maybe slightly different to how I reacted to my friend. I didn't hold anniversaries in such a way. When I look at what my wife does around her dad's death days and birthdays, it's a really, really difficult period, and I've noticed that. And then, according to the 5 stages, you end up in acceptance, which is described as an internalization. It's going to be okay. Not just a feeling that this too shall pass, but it has passed. Do you feel like you're anywhere near that stage at the moment?
I think it runs. It kind of runs through. I'm getting there.
Yeah.
I think, honestly, because I have had so much, you don't think about all the paperwork and the admin. And if because my parents weren't together and I wasn't close to my dad, I had to sort out all the admin. And I'm still sorting it out. I'm still in the midst of it. I nearly learned a law degree on my own. I don't think I will hit acceptance, or I think I might even go through the grief again once the admin's done.
Yeah.
Because it's all been tied in. All of things that I struggle with are tied to my mum's death. But when that's cleared off, I think I might go back round. Do it again.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it sounds incredibly difficult. Obviously, I'm not trained as a grief therapist. I don't specialize in grief, and I certainly don't want to sort of diagnose you sort of live right now. But there is something called complicated grief, which they say, if this persists after 1 year, could be a nod to something called complicated grief. And I just wondered if any of this is persisting. So one is an intense sorrow, pain, and rumination over the loss of your loved one.
Yeah. Yeah. In waves. Yeah. Have you ever seen it's a really good analogy. It's called like the pain button box. Have you seen it? It's they describe grief. So you've got a box. On the box, on one side, there's a button. And every time that button gets pressed, it is the most pain. but then you've got a ball in the box and the ball starts off massive. So it's always hitting that button. So you're just like, oh God, I'm in so much pain. And time makes the ball smaller. It never gets rid of the ball, but it's floating around like a screensaver. Eventually it hits the button and you're back on the pain again, but it does get smaller. And that's the best analogy I can describe, really. Yeah. Really useful. I don't know who made it. Pain box.
Wow.
Analogy.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'll definitely look that up. I mean, I think this idea that, you know, if you're feeling these things over a year, that it could mean X, Y, or Z, I must admit I find astonishing, because I would assume, not at an extreme level, but at a low level at least, these would persist forever. I would have assumed, actually. I was quite interested researching this, that this is, you know, classed as complicated grief after 1 year. But I guess the stats back it up. 10 and 20% of people will go through complicated grief and it will persist, you know.
So I heard a friend of mine, Charlie, his wife, I think, went through similar grief thing, and he said there's like almost a 2-year marker when a cloud lifts, and it does take about 2 years. I would be surprised if anyone's feeling okay after a year.
Yeah.
First 6 months, you're still like, what? Absolutely. You're still going to email them by accident. Do you know what I mean? So I'd say 2 years was kind of when I felt like I should get on then. But yeah. And now I'm coming up to 3 years and getting on.
Absolutely. And it's incredible how well you are doing, actually. And you know, I get that sense from talking to you, and even though we don't know each other well, just kind of meeting you today. There's one in here. Obviously, I want to move on into, you know, the things that have helped you and looking forward. There was one thing here that did sort of jump out at me, and I don't know if you're still feeling this, but one is numbness or detachment. I think this is something that you spoke to me about. Is that something that's sort of still going on?
Yeah.
Right.
100%. But it comes in all different places as well. Like it's not just numbness to what has kind of happened, but I absolutely detached for huge periods of time. But I need it. Like just because, how do I put it? Like with detachment, I think it's something people forget, that like your body's telling you something. Like if you can't wake up, it's because you need to sleep, and it's because your body's doing something that it's not telling you what it's doing. You need to be detached at this moment. There's no point in you're not going to be proactive if you attach back to society at this point. So just let it happen.
100%. I completely agree with you. Yeah, that's an incredibly, you know, amazing insight that you've just given us there, and I completely echo that. What would you say? I mean, I think it's remarkable that you've created the work that you have, and you are the person you are today, considering it is not even 3 years yet. Well, you mentioned your network of friends. What kind of things do you feel have really helped you sort of get you to this place you are currently?
Yeah, my friends, like swear. So I have my close-knit girls that all absolutely rounded through, and they saved my life in those 6 months. And then outside of that, like all my friends are artists, because I'm an artist now, and without it, I genuinely don't know what I'd be doing. Like it's a beautiful, beautiful pool of people expressing themselves and saving each other with their own expressions and inspirations. Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think, you know, that can be a danger on my podcast, and I never want it to come across this way, that the creative industries create mental health problems. I'm also a massive advocate that actually creativity really helps going through any kind of mental health challenges. I mean, if I can just pull a little bit out of your website about how you describe yourself, if you don't mind. You describe stripping pain away from its power through awkward conversations, holding up a mirror to ourselves. I mean, if that's not what we're doing right now, and not what your spoken word and your artwork says, I don't know what else. You know, like you're living proof of that, aren't you?
I can't help it. I didn't know I was an artist. I still don't. I just about know I'm an artist. I thought when I was a kid, I'd be at this point, kind of 2.4, in a stable job, earning a lot of money, having a social life. What I've now got is a career that is intertwined with the ways I have fun and my passions and my drive and my extended family, and it's all merged together. And I can't help but be that this way. I genuinely didn't think this was how it was going to go.
Well, your work is unbelievable. I want everyone to go check out T's work. Your spoken word is absolutely phenomenal. Your artwork is phenomenal. Let me just probe you a bit on this. What does it mean to strip pain from its power? How do you use creativity to strip pain?
So I think that's in a poem. I think I'm talking about my hands in it. And I'm basically saying, these hands have saved me. They're the ones that write songs when I can't speak. These are the ones that sort out friendships when I'm stressed with people. Like, pain is everywhere. All life is pain and suffering. Like, pain is everywhere. Everyone goes through it on a daily basis in all of its which ways and shapes and forms. It's not the controlling aspect. Like, it's not like you are, but you have to take charge with that and in whichever way you want to. So I write when I'm sad, I paint when I'm sad. Very few happy pieces of work, but it's almost like that's how I decanted it. Like, get it out. Like, the pain is now in the poem, not in this one. This one's going to go and have a nice day.
That's amazing. Well, you're right. There's no point running away from suffering or denying it's not there. By acknowledging it's there, you can actually sort of move forward and enjoy life. I mean, I think there's something quite Buddhist about that. I don't want to pretend that I know tons about Buddhism, but that is kind of the first sort of path of Buddhism, like accepting the suffering. And then once you accept that it's there, you can. I mean, I've completely, simplified it. No, but there is something very Buddhist about that, I think.
I don't really read. I'm terrible. I'm a very exothermic writer. But I picked up a Buddhist book the other month that was at my friend's house, and I was like, hey, so this is where I've come to. Like, I've been coming to places like this in my head on my own. So if I do ever go down that route, that's probably my angle. But yeah.
You can definitely see the pain and the sort of visceral catharticness, if that's a word, of your artwork. Please, guys, go and check out our artwork. It's fantastic, and I'll put all the links in there. But, you can really see it. It really comes through with your work, I think, what you're talking about. You go on to say your work focuses heavily on the catharsis of expression, which, and then you go on to say, we are all nuts, we all make mistakes, and we are also nuanced. Do not shy away from the ugliness, which I absolutely love. Could we just go back a step? You strike me, without knowing you hugely well, someone that is, dare I say this, probably pro-trans, I would imagine.
100%.
How was your experience with your dad, who you assumed identified as a cis male up until when he told you? Has that framed your perception of trans rights in any way? Has it affected how you view the trans debate in any shape? Not
at all. However, it has complicated my thought process when things come up. Do you know what the biggest shame is that I'm so pro-trans and I'm so pro-LGBT everything, and it's just like, we could have done something really cool if we were on good terms. We could have done something really active together. But no, it can't. People have got personalities. Sometimes people can be amazing people and terrible parents, and I'm not even afraid to say it at this point. Yeah. Respect the person, respect the transition. Like, you've done something and you're who you want to be, and that's all. That's the message you want to send to your kids. However, the other stuff, you can't separate them. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's in the same person. So all of the kind of reasons we don't talk anymore, they've got nothing to do with the transition. However, the transition was going on alongside it. So.
Got it.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting insight. Yeah. So in other words, your relationship didn't break down because of that. There was other factors at play. Right.
Long before as well. And then it's even hard when we're having the discussions, like, because we've tried to sort things out a couple of times, but like, even we can't really separate everything that's going on now, because it is quite a long bit of my life. And they think that half of it's to do with the transition. I'm like, it's not. Like, it's genuinely everything else about your personality. Everything else. Yeah.
Right. And I think you've said to me before, it's sort of affected you in other ways, like, in around sort of trusting men, which is obviously something that's quite difficult within the creative industries, because, at least half the time you've got to be able to do that sometimes with work. And how has that affected you in that sense, in terms of work?
In terms of work, okay. Because I was going to say, I would refer you to a poem I've written called Daddy's Issues, which is kind of linking up in a society how we do. There's kind of cat and mouth of men and women that's always going to be quite complicated and nuanced, but how that does affect the way I walk into a room and who I'm looking at, kind of thing. Work-wise, I mean, it's tricky because it is everything's quite male-dominated, especially in the creative things. But I don't trust a lot of people anyway at this point. Do you know, that's what I'm working on. I think a huge part of my grief is that because I feel like such an island, is that I really find it hard to trust anybody. So collaborative work has always been, it's kind of why I reached out to you, actually. I was like, I want to talk to an adult in the situation. I want to get my fingers in what's actually going on and doing stuff. But...
And I have to add, ladies and gentlemen, that T actually thought I was younger than 44. So that was a brilliant part of our conversation. She went, "What, you're 44?" And I was like, "This is great. This is great if I'm coming across younger, especially on camera." I just wondered as well, I think somebody, you know, who's listening to this who, you know, maybe is just starting out in the creative industries, or sounds like you did a bit of a sidestep, you know, just before the pandemic. Have you sort of got any advice for anybody that's kind of maybe just about to take the plunge from a sort of normal 9 to 5 into art and spoken word or whatever it might be? Got any advice for someone sort of about to start that journey?
Plunge. Go. like go for it. Run. Do what makes your belly tickle. Like, do it. The world's pretty crazy right now. Do you want to do something you don't want to do? No. I never do anything I don't want to do. I don't take jobs on that I don't want to do. I don't make art that I don't want to make. I don't write a poem about something I don't want to talk about. Do it. Yeah.
T, thanks so much for coming on today and being so open and vulnerable and raw with us, just to, you know, really help the listening viewers kind of who are maybe on that journey listening to this, or, you know, feel that they've got a loved one who maybe is going through something similar. I think it's going to make it very relatable to a lot of people. I really appreciate you coming on today. What would you say the one thing, if you had to pick one thing that you've learned through this process about yourself, is there anything that you think that
I've learned I'm so much cooler than I thought I was. Like, genuinely, like, I've seen you don't see what you've done until you've done it. Like, until you kind of take a pause and look back. And like, I'm looking at what I'm building and I have genuine optimism, and that's new. But like, you're a miracle, marvel. Like, everyone has got so much potential to do such sick things. And I had no idea. And now I'm kind of, strong.
And it sounds like you're taking the spirit and the love of your mum with you to sort of like power you on going forward. I can sort of get that sense, and I can sort of feel that.
I want to do an award show called the Mirandas eventually, for creative people. I want to like push her legacy really hard. She was amazing. She was so cool, so strange. Didn't take anything off of anyone. And her personality is my genetics. So
absolutely,
let's go. Yeah.
And I feel like this conversation today has, you know, been not only just helpful for our listeners, but I get the sense for you as well. And, you know, I really wish you well on your creative journey, but also your mental health journey going forward. And if there's anything I can do to help support you going forward, I'm totally #TMO. You can always reach out to me if you ever want to chat, or, you know, someone to chat to about anything going forward. The door's always open. I really mean that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I do love a chat. I will probably be taking you up on
You 100% can. 100% can. Thanks again, T. I really appreciate it. And for those listening and watching this, please like, review, share. Apparently, if you write a review, and of course, give me 5 stars, it helps the algorithm. So please do that. But thanks again for watching and listening. And as always, I will see you in 2 weeks' time.